Welcome to The Explainer. You know, sometimes the road is just scary. Today we're diving into a brilliant piece of storytelling that proves you absolutely don't need giant explosions or superheroes saving the world to create deeply gripping cinema. Sometimes the absolute highest emotional stakes happen going like 10 miles an hour in a completely empty parking lot. We're looking at a script called Love on the Road. On the surface, sure, it's about a guy learning to drive. But if we look at this through the lens of a film director, it is a literal masterclass in how a simple driving lesson becomes this rich canvas for vulnerability, trust, and romance. We're going to break down exactly how this narrative uses physical space, pacing, and tension to map out the beautiful and sometimes terrifying journey of falling in love. Okay, let's dive into this. This central logline right here, it is doing a ton of heavy lifting. In just a handful of words, it completely establishes the fundamental emotional stakes for our characters. I mean, think about it. Learning to drive is inherently about taking control, right? It's about moving forward and facing the very real fear of crashing. And here, the writer has perfectly paralleled that physical act of learning to navigate a car with the emotional act of learning to navigate a brand new relationship. The road is literal for sure, but it's also this massive, powerful metaphor for his entire life. So, to really understand this cinematic magic, we're going to track the evolution step by step. First, we'll look at the director's vision, then the tension on the road, followed by the turning point at the lake, the perfect drive, and finally, the cinematic takeaway.
Let's kick things off with part one, the director's vision, and how he established the baseline.
You know, every great scene study has to start by looking at the very first frame. We've got to see how the director establishes the baseline for our characters before the emotional journey even gets going. So, our opening scene takes place in this quiet, early morning parking lot. We meet Adam, and right out of the gate, the script feeds us these incredible visual cues. His hands are physically shaking, he's whispering to himself, "I can do this, I think." And he playfully, but honestly very truthfully, describes himself as a baby deer on ice. As a director, you absolutely love this stuff. It gives you this immediate physical and emotional instability to work with. As the audience, we instantly get Adam's baseline. He's insecure, he is terrified of making a mistake, and he is entirely stuck in his own head.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole dynamic of our duo. Just look at the contrast in their physical blocking here. On one side, you have Adam. He's tense, he's confined within this little metal box of the car, and he's physically shaking. But then on the other side, Lena appears outside the window. She's unconfined, she's casually holding a coffee, smiling, she's entirely grounded and confident. When she finally steps into that passenger seat, she brings all that warm reassurance right into his super tense space. So the contrast we're seeing isn't just about who's better at driving, it's a direct, visual representation of their internal emotional states.
Let's look at how this builds across the narrative. This timeline is essentially the emotional map of their entire journey together. Notice how the literal progression of the day, moving from morning all the way to evening, perfectly mirrors their relationship. They start off with this jerky, really tension-filled morning. Midday hits them with a moment of absolute panic. But by the afternoon, things finally settle into this calm vulnerability, which leads right into a smooth, romantic evening. Every single physical act of driving directly correlates to the evolving intimacy between Adam and Lena.
Moving on to part two, tension on the road. Or, as I like to call it, the catalyst of chaos.
Now, a story can't just be smooth sailing, right? Or, well, smooth driving in this case. Up until now, they've been in a pretty controlled environment, but suddenly, kinetic action forces them into a super heightened emotional state. Step one, a cyclist darts out into a narrow street out of nowhere. Boom, the pacing of the scene snaps from relaxed to instantly urgent. Step two, Adam panics. He overcorrects, yanks the wheel hard, and the car spins. It's this rapid, terrifying escalation, an almost crash that totally shatters whatever polite defenses he had left. But look at step three. This is the absolute magic of the scene. Lena doesn't yell, she doesn't freak out and grab the wheel, she just reaches out, holds his arm, and in this super steady voice says, "Hey, breathe, look at me, you're safe." This intense moment of extreme tension, immediately followed by her grounding release, just strips away all of Adam's walls. It proves to him, right there in the moment, that she is not going to abandon him when things spin out of control.
Which brings us to part three, turning point at the lake, the quiet climax.
That massive adrenaline spike leads us directly into the next scene. And I actually want to slow down our pacing right now to match this moment. Because from a directorial standpoint, this quiet climax is the profound emotional anchor of the entire script. They pull over, the adrenaline finally fades away, and Adam just confesses what has actually been going on in his head this whole time. He says, "I'm scared of driving, but I'm more scared of disappointing you."
So the crucial point is that this massive confession completely shifts the story's conflict. It was actually never about the car. It was never about the mechanics of driving. It was entirely about his fear of not being good enough for her. The physical fear of the road was literally just a mask for the deep, deep emotional stakes of his heart.
A great director knows exactly how to use the environment to amplify emotion, and the choices made here are just perfect. Let's deconstruct exactly why this lake scene works so beautifully. After all that claustrophobia and the sheer panic of the narrow street, we get this wide open view of the sun reflecting so calmly on the water. It physically breathes air back into the scene. We go from gripping a dashboard in pure terror to these gentle, reassuring smiles. And then, the most important physical action of the entire film happens right here. Their fingers slowly intertwining. It is deliberate, it's slow, and it represents the definitive turning point in their bond. The chaos is totally gone, replaced entirely by connection.
And Lena's response to his vulnerability is exactly the emotional feel Adam needs in that moment. She tells him, "You don't disappoint me. You make me proud every time you try." This dialogue, it's just a brilliant directorial choice. It resolves Adam's internal conflict instantly. She's validating his effort, not his execution. She isn't looking for some perfect, flawless driver. She's just looking for someone who is willing to try. And that takes us into part 4, the perfect drive, the payoff. Armed with that deep validation, Adam's internal conflict is finally resolved, and the external action completely reflects that new harmony. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is looking at the measurable growth of our characters from scene 1 to scene 5. Just look at Adam's hands. We started with these shaky, unsure movements. Now, they're steady and confident. Look at the physical connection. They started out separated by the center console, all tense and awkward, but now Lena has her head resting peacefully on his shoulder as the car just glides smoothly, the wind blowing through the windows. And Adam's mindset has completely transformed. He went from a terrified baby deer on ice to a man who confidently declares, "For you, I'll learn anything." His steady hands aren't just about mastering the steering wheel anymore. They literally represent his newfound love and his self-belief.
Finally, we arrive at part 5, the cinematic takeaway, a new beginning.
So how do you even conclude a story that is so intimately focused on a single car ride? Well, you frame it as a new beginning. The director gives us the ultimate visual payoff here. The camera pulls way back, giving us distance as the car drives off into the sunset. The lighting shifts so that Adam and Lena are now just these beautiful silhouettes inside the car, sitting closer than ever. By turning them into silhouettes, the director actually removes their specific identities for a minute and turns them into this universal symbol of romance. Accompanied by the wind blowing and that soft music playing, the framing just cements this profound feeling of triumph. Because at this point, it is no longer a driving lesson, it is the very first chapter of their lives together.
The script offers this incredibly poignant final voiceover to play right over that sunset shot. Sometimes the road is scary, sometimes your hands shake, but when someone believes in you, even the hardest journey becomes beautiful. This just brings the entire thematic message of our explainer full circle, doesn't it?